28. This side event is going to discuss the Adaptation Fund work on the disaster risk reduction and early warning system. We have a very rich set of speakers here, but before opening, I would like to welcome you to this side event. My name is Mohammed Asuyuti. I work at the Adaptation Fund Board Secretariat as Senior Climate Change Specialist, and I have the honor to moderate this side event. This event will be an opportunity to discuss and present key lessons learned from the Adaptation Fund portfolio dedicated to disaster risk reduction and early warning system, as I was saying. The event will also be an opportunity to hear from our guest speakers. They are from our implementing entities. We have them here. They have been implementing many of our projects on the ground, so we'll have a chance to hear from them. But before doing so, I would like to invite some of our keynote speakers. We have one who is slightly running late, but we'll start with the head of the Adaptation Fund, Mr. Mikko Olikainen. Mikko, over to you.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me well. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this important Adaptation Fund event dedicated to strengthening resilience through disaster risk reduction and early warning systems, titled Adaptation Fund, Making Lasting Impacts in Vulnerable Countries While Reducing Disaster Risks. As we know, being on the dangerous warming trend towards 1.5 degrees and potentially beyond that, the world faces an escalating threat from extreme climate events leading to devastating impacts on livelihoods, ecosystems, infrastructure, particularly on the most vulnerable. The urgent need to address these risks has prompted countries and organizations to focus on disaster risk reduction and early warning systems, among other climate change adaptation measures. The Adaptation Fund was established in 2001 under the Framework Convention and launched in 2007. So we've been working for a bit more than 15 years on these issues. Its mandate is to assist developing country parties that are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change by helping them meet the costs of adaptation by financing concrete adaptation projects and programs. Those projects are country-driven and based on the needs of the priorities of the countries and their communities. The Adaptation Fund also pioneered direct access, and we have some of our direct access entities talking to us today, to access funding and develop projects directly through accredited national implementing entities. The Adaptation Fund, with its large portfolio of adaptation projects and its long experience, relatively long experience as a pioneer and innovator in adaptation finance, is averting and minimizing losses and damages through disaster risk reduction and early warning system projects. These types of projects represent almost a fifth of the fund's portfolio, and the fund has demonstrated a commitment to building disaster resilience in vulnerable communities. The projects totaled over $112 million, with budget ranging between $4 million and $14 million each. Notably, more than 500 early warning systems have been established at local, national, and regional levels, enabling communities worldwide to access critical climate information and hydrometeorological services. Of these, more than half were in Africa, followed by Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia Pacific, and Eastern Europe. Disaster risk reduction and early warning systems are approaches to adaptation that are linking closely with loss and damage. We are very pleased about the important decision this week of the new Loss and Damage Fund and the significant pledges to it. As the Secretariat of the Adaptation Fund Board, we've supported the process of setting up this new fund through the technical support unit of the Transitional Committee, and we will continue working with this new fund as it becomes operational, as we work with other existing climate funds, such as the Green Climate Fund and the Global Environment Facility. Beyond the project portfolio, the Adaptation Fund has joined multiple global efforts to advance early warning systems, such as the United Nations Secretary General's Early Warnings for All initiative, the Alliance for Hydromet Development, and the Systematic observations financing facility, which combined are working to reduce climate impacts through increased access to weather and climate data, increasing early warning systems, and increasing capacities of national meteorological and hydrological services. The fund has recently released a new report on strengthening resilience through disaster risk reduction interventions and early warning systems just a couple of months ago. It's part of our strategic pillar of sharing from our experience. The publication, as you will hear in a bit from my colleague Christina, who is our knowledge management coordinator, emphasizes the crucial role of disaster risk reduction and early warning systems confronting the intensifying challenges associated with climate change. The Adaptation Fund is committed to supporting developing countries to build resilience to climate disasters, and this study provides valuable evidence and recommendations to help us achieve that goal through concrete, scalable examples on the ground. Thank you, and over to you, Mahmoud.
Thank you, Mikko. And as you were saying, indeed, we have a new study which is out showcasing the fund work on disaster risk reduction and early warning system that we'll have a chance to hear from my colleague Christina. Now, the next keynote speaker that we have is the Vice Chair of the Adaptation Fund Board, who is, so Lucas Di Petro is the Adaptation Fund Board Vice Chair, and Lucas, over to you for opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for being late. Running from building to building is not so easy. A little big, the place. So, good afternoon, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to be here and to address you at the Adaptation Fund event dedicated to disaster risk reduction and early warning system titled Making Lasting Impacts in Vulnerable Countries While Reducing Disaster Risk. The Adaptation Fund finances concrete projects that help the most vulnerable communities in developing countries adapt and build resilience to climate change, including through disaster risk reduction interventions and early warning systems. Many of these are replicable and scalable. It has been delivering tangible projects, flexible climate finance, and knowledge since its launch 16 years ago. The fund formally serves the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol, and is doing work that also supports the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It has grown rapidly to committing over 1.1 billion to more than 160 projects, serving almost 43 million total beneficiaries to date and putting in place more than 500 early warning systems. It has expanded its offering in tandem with growing global adaptation needs, including doubling funding for country projects and adding funding windows in project scale-up, innovation, learning, and locally led action. Through its country-led projects targeted to local adaptation needs, it is reaching the most vulnerable communities which urgently need adaptation solutions. It has a growing range of implementing partners, and it's empowering marginalized groups such as youth, women, and others, with half of its portfolio in least developed countries and small island developing states. Very often, the fund's projects are the first adaptation action on the ground in many vulnerable places across the globe and are producing both immediate benefits to the most vulnerable local communities and valuable experiences and lessons that can be later scaled up and replicated by others to help meet the tremendous adaptation need we are facing across the globe. Close to 20 projects have been later scaled up with added fundings. Among its flexible and innovative financial modalities, the EF is Pioneer Direct Access, as you may know, which is a climate finance modality that builds country ownership in adaptation by empowering developing countries to access finance and managing projects directly through national implementing entities based in countries themselves. About 30% of the fund projects are direct access projects, making tangible differences on the ground in enhancing lives and livelihoods of most vulnerable to climate change. As we see the urgency of climate change continue to rise with increasing sea level rise, global temperatures, floods, droughts, frequency and intensity of storm, the Adaptation Fund has been receiving record demand for projects over the last several years. With the recent adaptation gap report showing adaptation needs to be more than 50% higher than previously estimated, and Adaptation Fund's growing pipeline of projects not yet funded, now reaching over $425 million. Its next 5-year strategy is aimed at scaling up adaptation, accelerating innovation, actions, and a knowledge base of scalable solutions. The fund also works actively in complementary and coherence with other funds to maximize support and simplify access for developing countries. Furthermore, with its large portfolio of adaptation projects and its long experience as a pioneer and innovator in adaptation finance, the fund is preventing loss and damage through disaster risk reduction and early warning system projects. In line with the commitment by developed countries made at the Glasgow Climate Conference in 2021 to double adaptation finance from 2019 levels by 2025, the fund has set a resource mobilization goal for 2023 of $3 million to maintain pace with the record adaptation demand it has been receiving. In sum, the Adaptation Fund is a key channel for enhanced adaptation action and support, and stands ready to support countries in fulfilling their enhanced ambition under the Paris Agreement. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Lucas. And as you were saying, the Adaptation Fund has been pioneering direct access since the beginning, and most of our projects are the first one on the ground. Some of them have been delivering concrete results in terms of disaster risk reduction early warning system. So we have commissioned a study earlier this year which looked at how the portfolio of the fund has building resilience on the early warning system of disaster risk reduction. My colleague Christina will have a few slides which will present some of the findings of this study. So Christina, you will go through that, and after that we'll hear from our implementing entities who have been implementing some of those projects on the ground. So Christina, over to you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Is this on? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, and it is my pleasure to share with you some findings and lessons learned from a recently completed study on strengthening resilience to disaster risk reduction and early warning system interventions, and this is based on findings from our AF portfolio, where we analyzed 7 such projects in this area. So very quickly, to reiterate the words that were already said, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, we do have as a mandate to fund concrete adaptation projects with tangible results on the ground in most climate vulnerable developing countries and communities. We're also a pioneer and a leader on the innovative financing modality of direct access and enhanced direct access modalities, where the countries are able to access funding directly from us without having to go through an intermediary, as long as they are accredited with the fund. And also our funding adaptation has increased up to like $1 billion of funding to date. Just to quickly show a regional distribution to date of where we invest, the highest number of projects at the moment are in Asia Pacific with 54 projects, followed by Africa with 53, Latin America, and then we do have some projects in Eastern Europe as well. Of the entire portfolio, we have funded so far 6%, so 6% of our funding is in disaster risk reduction projects completely, and then another 12% disaster risk reduction, which also includes early warning system, for a total of 18% of the total portfolio to date. And in terms of the regional distribution of these DRR and EWS projects, we have 7 such projects in Asia Pacific, 5 in Africa, 5 in Latin America, and 2 in Eastern Europe. And of this total, we have 7 such studies depicted in our study, in our report. So, as I mentioned, the report that we recently launched or are launching here provides an overview of the fund's experience and lessons learned on disaster risk reduction and early warning system interventions in strengthening long-term resilience to climate change, and it includes case studies from our portfolio. And its objective is to seek to advance understanding among the wider adaptation community, as well as generate and share knowledge on project approaches. The study was produced under the third pillar of the medium-term strategy for 2023 and 2027, which is the pillar of learning and sharing, whose aim is to develop knowledge and evidence on effective and innovative adaptation action and finance. And as I mentioned, it includes 7 funded projects and programs based on a few criteria. So we looked at projects that were at least at midpoint in implementation, that had a diversity of approaches. We also looked at the geographic diversity and projects that had accumulated significant results. So some of these, we divided these case studies in, let's say, 3 different approaches. So we looked at some that had community approaches, and these were mainly national projects in Pakistan, Mongolia, and Cook Islands. Then we also looked at projects with a regional approach, which are the ones in Chile, Colombia, Peru, and then Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, and Comoros. And then we also included 2 basin-wide approaches, which are the Western Balkans, and then a regional project in Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Mali, and Togo. So what are some of the findings and lessons that we found? So drawing on these case studies, the fund projects are using a range of approaches, including the multi-scalar approach, multi-sector, community-based disaster risk reduction, and complementarity and reinforcing of these approaches. The study has found that a combination of approaches that link across these areas provides a useful model for disaster risk reduction and early warning system projects. On the multi-scalar approach, projects are successfully working across multiple jurisdictional and ecological scales to build long-term resilience. This includes communities and municipalities, as well as national, regional, and often international levels. And at ecological scales, projects are crossing mountain ranges, such as the regional project in the Andes, but also river basins, the Volta one and the one on the Drin in the Western Balkans. This also recognizes both the transboundary nature of hazards and climate risks and the important role of governments at all levels. On the multi-sector approach, projects are bringing together a range of government departments to implement project activities. This includes, in some cases, the National Hydrology and Meteorology Services, as well as agencies that manage climate change, environment, housing, and urban development, or land use planning, public works, public health, water resources, and agriculture, and in some cases, even the armed forces. So by bringing all these departments together, projects have enabled integrated risk management planning, which are more effective early warning systems and development of coordination mechanisms that will help implement cross-sectoral adaptation actions. At the community level, or community approaches, the projects have demonstrated that planning for disasters and building resilience requires all of society. And there's a strong engagement in projects from communities, from international NGOs, community-based organizations, universities, the media, including the private sector. And all these various groups bring expertise and evidence and support for changing behavior towards a more resilient action and interventions. And on the complementarity and reinforcing of these approaches, designing projects with interlinked and reinforcing approaches strengthens resilience. It's one of the findings. And this includes developing both hard and soft infrastructure, such as early warning system, barrier walls, and rainwater harvesting systems. And this is also combined with nature-based approaches, such as urban greening and reforestation to reduce landslides and soil erosion. Projects are developing a knowledge base through hazard, vulnerability, and risk mapping, building of infrastructure to collect hydrological and meteorological data, but also supporting integration for all these data sources to provide a comprehensive understanding of climate risks. So multiple challenges emerged as well from these projects, challenges that were faced by the projects. One of them is the coordination among stakeholders, which was found to be very time and resource intensive, and this became a challenge in many projects as disaster risk reduction and early warning systems involve several government stakeholders that do not traditionally work together. We've seen that in Peru. In addition, regional projects need to engage across scales and countries, which in turn increases the number of partners and stakeholders that need to be involved and kept informed. Then another challenge was related to limited data and technical capacity. So meteorological and hydrological services are understaffed and lack technical capacity to address the many components of an early warning system. It was also found that countries lack the skilled technicians, hydrologists, and meteorologists needed to develop and maintain these systems. National hydrology and meteorology services also lacks capacity to understand the data at times, and in some cases, the data needs of other parts of the government and local communities. And all of this makes it difficult to adapt information for their needs. And finally, many countries lack the basic data to develop the modeling required to make effective long-term decisions. And finally, challenges related to sustainability. It was found that countries lack the regular annual budgetary funding for collection and storage of long-term hydrology and meteorological data, and for the operation and maintenance of the infrastructure necessary, such as automatic weather station, many of which need to be updated or even replaced every 6 years. And then, of course, there were challenges related to COVID, which affected all of the projects, slowing implementation and leading to cancellation of some of the activities. Now, specific findings and lessons learned related to early warning systems and disaster risk reduction interventions. On the early warning system side, there was a need for there was a finding that improved data quality leads to better decision making. And to address these local data gaps, projects developed innovative approaches such as using international satellite data. Community engagement was found to be a powerful tool for data collection and for validation of national government data. And integrating multiple forms of information is important for building robust assessments such as risk mapping, vulnerability assessments, scenario planning, and land use planning. For instance, in Pakistan, the early warning systems used automatic weather monitoring equipment and also local hazard groups to bring together scientific and community information. Another finding was that understanding and communication risk improves outcomes, as projects have generated evidence that different communities need different types of information and in different forms to enable action. So engaging community in disaster risk management decision-making requires them to have access to the appropriate information in the right form and from the appropriate messenger. Then there was another need for hydrometeorological and community institutions to be fit for purpose, scale, and context, which in the end drives for success. So while installing hydrological or meteorological station is important, projects also need technical staff with appropriate skills and sufficient budget so they can maintain, operate, and manage the incoming data for use in early warning. It was also found at a disaster risk reduction intervention site that community-led actions are crucial for long-term resilience. Risk planning is more effective with the involvement of communities, and given the uncertainties of risk, community-based approaches integrate local knowledge and empower meaningful participation in deliberative decision-making. But they also build common understanding of impacts, disaster management and procedures, and give ownerships over the outcomes. Also, there's a need for an alignment with government structure, which enables scaling up. So by linking projects with policy and government programs, interventions are sustainable and they support existing priorities and provide ownership and buy-in. On the partnership side, NGOs and CSOs enabled projects to fulfill many of their goals. These organizations are trusted in the communities and can share information and produce outcomes that cannot be achieved without a strong partner. And finally, it created learning opportunities, which builds capacity and supports sustainability. So there's a learning within communities and across project sites and across cities, countries, national jurisdictions, and regions. So all the workshops and training programs that took place, as well as the site visits and informal knowledge sharing, have led to a better understanding of climate risk and the effective implementation of activities. And finally, the report issued some recommendations, one related to strengthening coordination and collaboration among stakeholders and relevant initiatives, such as the initiative on the early warning for all, which the Adaptation Fund endorses, but also to strengthen the Alliance for Hydromet Development and its systematic observation financing facility. A recommendation related to sustainability, saying that there needs to be more effort to build support systems for countries during the term of a project, and this could include ensuring climate services or disaster risk management have an annual budget or create an innovative financing mechanism for long-term support. There's also a need for adaptive management and learning, so it is important to build in mechanisms for projects to change and learn, which improves outcomes in the end, and lessons related to how projects have addressed these changes are important to be shared across all projects teams. And finally, the final recommendation is on engaging with communities, like I mentioned earlier. So communities are central to making disaster risk plans, as they are the ones who understand and address the local risks. Thank you, and feel free to reach out to me at the end. I can show you where this report is found, as I think I cannot really bring it up here, but I'm happy to share it with you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. And as you have presented, many of these findings and recommendations are going to be used to improve the quality of the portfolio. As I was saying at the beginning, those kind of studies are part of our operations. So we have about 20 of those, and they are available in our website. So we will be happy to share further on different thematic. Now we'll deep dive into some of the projects that have been implemented by some of our partners on the ground. So I would like to introduce Claudia Godfrey. She is the director of the Peruvian Trust Fund for National Parks and Protected Area, Profunampe. So Claudia, you have been implementing one of the projects that we have listed as part of this study, lesson learned from the adaptation project titled Adaptation to the Impact of Climate Change on the Peruvian Coastal Marine System and Fisheries. So can you tell us a bit about this project and how it has helped build resilience in using early warning system on the ground? Thanks. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, colleagues. And thank you to the Adaptation Fund for the invitation. My name is Claudia. I'm going to do a presentation, and while I was looking and reviewing my presentation, I was thinking what is missing. So please pay attention, because at the end of the presentation, I am going to ask you what is missing. For those who do not know us, I represent Profunampe. Profunampe is a 30 years organization, Peruvian organization. We are the Peruvian Environmental Fund in Peru. And our purpose, and next, Cristina, please. Our purpose is to promote the sustainability of life by linking humanity with environment. So now I'm going to tell you about our lessons learned from the project Adaptation to the Impacts of Climate Change on the Peru's Coastal Marine Ecosystems and Fisheries. So that's Profunampe for you. And next, please. This is the information of the project. This is a $6.9 million size project funded by the Adaptation Fund. The executing entities are the Ministry of Production and the Peruvian Marine Institute. This project was developed in two sites. One is Huacho in the north of Lima, and the other one in Máncora in the very north of the country. The length was 5 years, and the objective, as you can see, was to support the Peruvian government in reducing the vulnerability of coastal communities to the impacts of climate change on marine coastal ecosystems and their fishery resources. Next, please. These are the three components. I am not going to explain them, to read them, but the first component was to work with the communities and the government on several adaptation measures and try to pilot them. The next one was the development of a monitoring and forecasting system. The third one was how we manage and gather information and then develop this early warning system. And the fourth one was to develop policies. And then I'm going to tell you what happened with that. Next, please. These are some of the results that we achieved with the project. We work with 55 women. We developed with them enterprises. They are entrepreneurs now, and developed, for example, a business that use the waste to produce biofertilizers. They are a very good product for organic agriculture. They are working together in different parts of the pilot sites. There are more than 4 organizations, businesses. Also, we work with artisan fishermen in both pilot sites to improve their catch efficiency with fishing gears. So they learn how to work with these gears, new gears for them. Also, we improve the marketing capabilities of 87 artisanal fishermen to sell their products with a traceability system applied for new customers. Improve institutional capacities on the collection of information and models. This was very important for the early warning system that I'm going to tell you soon, in the next slide, and also to develop these protocols for local monitoring groups and the promotion of ecotourism with different kind of entrepreneurs from gastronomy, handicrafts, and also tourism. Next, please. So this is how the early warning system works, or their phases. The first one is knowing the risks, gathering the information, knowing the hazards, and understanding how the community is exposed, and analyze past events and statistics. So with this, we understood what were the specific risks or the most important risks. Then monitoring and alerts, permanent monitoring based on technical and scientific data, the full 24 hours a day, then the dissemination and communication, and the response of the capacities. So in the third, dissemination and communication, we developed an application. This application in Spanish is MIMAR. MIMAR, and next please. MIMAR is based on this, in this model. This is the operational model of the early warning system. This, as you may see, we have seven modules in 7 ways to, it's not 7 ways, in 7 steps with phases, where you can see since the first model, that is risk awareness, to how we operate this. So this was developed for the 2 pilot sites. We gathered this information with equipment that we acquired with the project. This equipment gather information from the ocean that this is very important to collect in quantity and quality. So the idea is to have this information crossed by very important protocols developed with the communities. Next, please. So this is MIMAR. MIMAR in this moment is just for Android cell phones. And the idea is to have a participatory monitoring system. So the fishermen can register incidents. For example, the presence of algae. So some algae are there because there is toxicity, and they can reduce the population of fish, for example. Next, please. And the lessons learned. For example, I was talking about the collection of data. Collection of data is really important. As I mentioned, if we do not have the correct information, it's very difficult to, for example, monitor what is happening. The thing is that we faced a difficulty with the project because the information was there, but it was very difficult to understand. We developed a web page, and the information were curves and lines and colors, and it was like, who is going to understand this? Then we talked with our colleagues from the Institute of the Research of Peru to translate all this information. Then, as you know, working with monitoring groups local monitoring groups is quite difficult if you don't develop all the tools and information with them. So for us, working with this app was a huge challenge, but last a little long that the time that we planned, but at the end it works really well. Next, please. So sorry. These are lessons learned cross with the project, not just from the early warning system. Working with women was a challenge because we need to suit with their schedules and routines and commitments, but they are really well engaged with all this system too. The sustainability, the participating, the facilitation for our replicability of this project needs to have more information to produce all the evidence that we have now. But I want to raise my voice because we found two very important issues. The first one is governance. If we don't have well engaged all the governments from all the levels, it's really difficult to apply or implement an early warning system. We face that because, as you know, we have a new president all December during the last 5 years, and everything changes. So that's difficult. And the other one, as I mentioned, data available. Make it understandable for the participation. So if this is the last, I think. Well, it's more than something, yeah. But what is missing in my presentation? Yeah. The people. Yes, we are talking about people. And with Cristina, we were in the field a couple of months ago, and I have in my mind all the faces that we see, that we talk, and we need to think about people. The early warning system is not just data. We need to think about the people. We need to intervene with them together and to know that we are doing a lot of efforts, but the funds needs to go to the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, and thanks for bringing up the human face of climate change. I mean, adaptation is about people. At the Adaptation Fund, we believe that climate finance has to resolve issues on the ground, and we're happy to see that the concrete results from your project are changing lives of people on the ground. So thanks for that. The next speaker I have in the panel is Frederick Mulinda. So Frederick is from Tanzania, and he's from one of our national implementing entity, National Environment and Management Council for Tanzania. NEMC is implementing many of projects funded by the Adaptation Fund. I guess we have about 4 of them now under implementation. So Frederick, can you tell us a bit about the disaster risk reduction and early warning system that the Adaptation Fund has helped support in Tanzania, and how things have been helpful in addressing climate resilience in Tanzania?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. As Mahatma has said, my name is Frederick. I come from the United Republic of Tanzania. It is a country in the East Africa, the largest country, and the United Republic is made of one part is the mainland and the other is the islands of Zanzibar. Very, very common, and some of you may have heard about Kilimanjaro, the focal point of tourism in the world, I would say. NEMC has been accredited by Adaptation Fund since close to the end of 2017, and ever since we have been in the process of implementing projects. I know even before our accreditation, we already had a project implemented by a multilateral implementing entity in Tanzania worth 5 million. But currently we have 4 projects that are running. Can you go next, please? That are running throughout the country. These are regular sized projects, which are in total worth 5 million. So each project is around 1.2, 1.4 million US dollars. Well, these projects are meant to address some of the disasters that may be caused by climate change, and they focus mainly on 3 sectors: the agricultural sector, the water sector, and coastal and marine environment sector. The coastal and marine is in the islands of Zanzibar, and the water and agricultural sector of focused projects are in the mainland Tanzania. We have seen a lot of impacts of climate change being exacerbated actually in central regions of Tanzania, which are drought. They have drought conditions, but these conditions have been really increasing because of the impacts of climate change. And can you go next, please? We see impacts in the agricultural sector, crop failures in the central regions of Tanzania. And, you know, in Tanzania, we say agriculture is the backbone of our economy. And some of you who may have heard the speech of our president, she said yesterday that Tanzania is losing about 2 to 3% of the GDP to the impacts of climate change. So agriculture is really one of the most important sectors. Livestock husbandry is also part of the agricultural sector, and these sectors are heavily affected. We see animals die because of lack of pastures, lack of water. We see crops die because of prolonged drought. And actually, in the endless plains of the central part of the country, sometimes dry conditions and wet conditions, alternate, and sometimes when the rains are very high, they will also come and sweep the crops because the plains are very long, very extensive, and if agriculture is carried out without right techniques, people will end up, losing crops and famine-stricken. So also in the islands of Zanzibar, we have a problem of salt water inundation. We have one of the projects that is addressing that problem. We have seen plains in various areas where cultivation of rice was practiced, but with the intrusion of salt water from the ocean, those areas were no longer possible to cultivate rice in, and some of those areas were completely deserted. I know that traditionally people have some mechanism of blocking the salt water from entering their farmlands. They construct earthen dikes, but those earthen dikes constructed these are handmade. They are not strong enough to hold to resist the water for a long time, and therefore they stay for a short time, and then the cycle repeats itself again. So So as part of disaster risk interventions in these projects, the projects funded by the Adaptation Fund have helped in analyzing the risk, the causal factors, and trying to bring out interventions that will reduce the exposure to hazards, lessening the vulnerability of the communities that are exposed, improving the management of environment. I know sometimes it's not only climate change that causes all such things. Sometimes unsustainable practices that are carried out by communities exacerbate the impacts, and therefore we're also involved in helping them to restore the environment, to manage the environment and the land so that the impacts will not be very bad. But we also help them prepare for the impact. Can you go next? Now, part of the interventions that we have in various areas in the country and under such projects, like you can see that dike, that's an earthen dike built in Zanzibar. You'll see that on one side of that picture there's water in the plain. Actually, immediately after the erection of that dike, after a short time when the rains came and the salt in the land was neutralized, in the next season people were able to cultivate rice. And actually the president of Zanzibar came to inaugurate this, this dike, because it has really transformed the lives of more than 300 farmers. Most of them are women who depend on agriculture for livelihood. But we construct, we have water harvesting dams in various places in the country, and from the dams we construct cattle drinking troughs, because some of the dams that were constructed years ago, some of them, were affected by siltation because of our sustainable livestock husbandry. So now we provide troughs for cattle drinking. We help communities to, learn how to restore the vegetation that has been lost. People learn how to raise trees that are adapted in the given areas. We teach them how to have drip irrigation schemes, small drip irrigation schemes that they can learn from and upscale at a district level. Can you go next, please? But as for early warning system, I would say that these projects were not really designed to have early warning systems, but again we leverage on the already existing structures. We have the Tanzania Meteorological Agency that gives weather forecasts every 10 days, every month, and every season. And therefore, we use such information at a project level and communicate the forecasts and interpret them at a district level and help the extension officers pass the information to the farmers and the local communities so that they will prepare and, be able to not get affected as much as they would if they didn't have the information. So those pictures just show some of the information that the Tanzania Meteorological Agency releases on 10 daily, every month, and ever after 3 months. And we use the same information, interpret them to the local communities. And that's how the projects have been supporting communities to reduce the risks that are brought about by climate change impacts. I think, some of the information can be accessed through the social media outlets of the meteorological organization. But again, I think local communities need somebody to help them understand what they mean and be led on how to prepare and reduce the impact. Thank you very much. I think.
Thank you, Frederick, and thanks for showing us the concrete activities on the ground. We always say that the Adaptation Fund mandate is to fund tangible and concrete actions on the ground. So that's demonstrate what our funding has been used on the ground. So thanks for showing those results. We hope that this will continue. The next speaker we have is Ms. Roberta Boscolo from WMO. WMO is one of our important partners when it comes to early warning system and disaster risk reduction. We're happy to have Marcus in the room as well. So, Roberta, can you tell us about how WMO has been supporting countries with adaptation funding, and in particular in the aspect of the early warning system and disaster risk reduction? We know that AF and the Adaptation Fund WMO works beyond the project. We have multiple partnerships, including through the Alliance for Hydromet and the SOF. But if you can speak about the projects that have been funded by the Adaptation Fund.
Sure. Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. WMO has two important regional projects, actually. One, and this is, I'm going to talk for two projects. So one is the Volta flood and drought management projects in Africa. And then I hope we have the rest of the presentation, another project called Enandes in South America. So the projects in the Volta Flood and Drought Management Project is still under implementation. It is going to finish in 2024. And it is based as a project, regional, as I said, a regional project in West Africa, covering 400,000 square kilometers and 6 countries that has been facing severe challenges in terms of climate change and events. But not only climate change, also it is, we have multiple crises. It's also civil wars and political instability. And in this part of Africa, there has been a lot of floods and droughts events that have occurred also in the past years and have impacted lives and livelihood. So also the current studies says that this region will experience in the future shorter monsoon period and intense rainfall that's pattern, and then longer dry season. So next one. So thanks to the Adaptation Fund, the Volta Basin project has developed, no, this is not, no, probably, go back, because this is actually at the end. Okay, so maybe just leave it to the first one. Has developed a web-based integrated flood and drought early warning system that is supported operationally with the national meteorological agencies of the 6 countries, and also regional entity and also international organization. And it is, as I said, the web-based source and integrates early warning system and provides a way to disseminate the information to national services, but also to other institutions like civil security and also the population itself. The project has 3 main components, but that helped to build this tool, which is the Volta Alarm. And the Volta Alarm is covering the transboundary Volta Basin region, and it is also an important tool for monitoring climate change hazards, and then it is used also for informing decision-making at the local level, and to develop responses to and adaptation measures. This tool also is very important because it is used to increase the capacity of the national and regional stakeholders, which has been carried out in the region, and also has improved also the coordination among the countries, to take into consideration that when you have an adaptation measure, you really, especially when you have a basin like this, a transboundary water, you need to also consider, that your adaptation measure doesn't affect the other countries in a negative way. So having these tools that is looking at the 6 countries together helps them to take decisions together. And so it is a truly regional project with a regional integration. So this tool is operationally available, and is also used to test for forecast as well, using the forecast, not only monitoring, but also seasonal forecast for monsoon and dry season, and it is actually going to be tested in few pilot projects. So next. Here, yes, is some challenges that the project has found. Of course, the COVID, because they started in the middle of the COVID time. The other challenge has been also mentioned before is the data sharing from national agencies and regional authorities, and also support through different institutional support, and the importance of having all the stakeholders working together. And yeah, I think goes next because the time is so this is the website where this volatile alarm is accessible. Next one. And then we go to the other project. It's called Enandes. It's a project in South America, actually looking at the Andean communities, and has another regional project with 3 countries, Colombia, Peru, Chile. This project is going to finish in 2025, and it is looking actually at the value chain of climate services, from the weather and climate products that the Met services in the region produce, but how to reach really the users and how to help them to interpret this information so that they have positive outcomes. And this is something that was also mentioned before, like, you cannot really provide difficult and data or graphs. You need to also help the communities to have this information which are digestible for them. And also this project is looking at the socioeconomic benefit of these climate services and how they really help, they have an impact at the community level. Next one. Also here we have 4 components of the projects, which is looking at institutional strengthen the institution, like the institution that provided the information and the data, but how they also interact with other institutions at the regional and national level. How to empower the stakeholders, so how we really help them to interpret this data and really use it. And also, a very important, how this is integrated also at the regional level. So we have 4 sectors that we are looking at. Next one. And it's just some example. We have been reproducing some best practices that has been used, for example, in Colombia, where they have this, it's called a technical agroclimatic committees at the local level. And this is replicated also. We have an experience in activities to show how they can use this concept in other countries. Next one. And also, next one. Very quickly, we have we use this concept of technical committee at the community level for agriculture, but also we are using the same concept for energy, for example, for renewable energy and resilience energy. Very important to provide access to energy to all the communities. Next one. Just to the organizers, but next one I think is very important, that has been instrumental, the work that we have done with the Adaptation Fund in these 3 countries, because we were able to attract more funds from the Swiss Development and Cooperation, and now this project is actually covering 6 countries in the region. With the money from the Swiss government, we are able also to apply the same concept of these projects with Argentina, Bolivia, and Ecuador as well. So we now have a project that is called Enandes Plus. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta. And indeed, we at the Adaptation Fund, we believe that our intervention cannot resolve all the issues. So we hope that scaling up is one of the options, and we're happy to note that this project has been scaled up by the Swiss corporation. I had a chance to visit the Volta Ram project, the Volta Basin project last year, and indeed it's very impressive. And I just want to mention that having a regional cooperation for early warning system is very important. So that's one of the things that we've been doing. The Adaptation Fund is one of the few funds that has a dedicated window for regional projects. And we're really happy to see that window helping countries to cooperate in this issue of the early warning system. Last but not least, we're going to hear from Marir Mohammed Hasni, who is a tech member, and Marie is coming from Maldives. So Marie, last but not least, and we would like to hear from you how the Adaptation Fund has worked with you to build some resilience on the ground in the context of the early warning system. Over to you.
Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you for all the colleagues for the great presentation. It is indeed inspiring that technology cross-cutting every project that has been implemented in it. So I am from the Technology Executive Committee, which is the policy arm of the UNFCCC technology mechanism. So allow me to introduce the work that we are doing in terms of with regards to early warning systems. As you may already know, the last year the UNSG announced early warning system for all, and under that banner, as you can see, there are a lot of information, climate information that is required and needed to undertake the activities, adaptation activities perhaps is needed. So the Technology Executive Committee, together with the GEO, under the Early Warning for All initiative launched at the UNSG and spearheaded by the WMO as well as UNDRR to develop knowledge products that will highlight what are the technologies and innovations that are available in the context of disaster risk reduction. So just give you a snapshot of how this came into the Technology Executive Committee is we try to analyze what the countries have put forward. So the countries have said that from the 1/3 of the people, half the countries on the earth, they are covered by the early warning systems, and in their NDCs, around 1/4 of the countries mention the importance of EWS and part of their climate plans as they submit the NDCs as well. So we also analyze the technology needs assessment, which countries does undertake under their own initiative. So we identified that coastal zones and agriculture remains as a top priority for them, and also from those information we identified loss and damage, biodiversity, food security, energy system infrastructure, also cross-cuts across all these thematic elements that had been alluded by many of our colleagues here. So I just want to in Technology Executive Committee, we don't just determine technology as a hardware or institution. So technology for us, it's also, for example, like for technology could be the mobile phone, but the application itself is also a technology, which is an hardware or software. How we use the mobile application is the hardware. So the technology is not just the hard infrastructure that normally we use to think about, but the notion of how we use the system and how we monitor the system is also crucial there. So I have heard from colleagues who implemented in Peru cases, for example, like they remained focused about the communication system and how the people are going to use the system that builds the I would say technology, because technology remains as one of the means of implementation actually that is happening on the ground per se. And also data sharing that was just alluded by Roberto, emphasis that technology needs to be connected to the people, and it is to be demonstrated as well. Just to provide you a snapshot of things are, just I don't want to make it this more complicated than now. So just focusing on the what technology measures. So we say hardware, software, hardware are other parameters that we define technology. Countries need to put in place while supporting the early warning systems in action. And what it takes for developed countries, developed scientifically sound and fundable or bankable climate policies and projects. This is essential, as well as what will be the role in producing those knowledge product information, connecting the technology priorities to the country's support is also something that the Technology Executive Committee is looking in this publication that we are exploring. Just to give you a bit more into a zoom into the work of the innovation of risk knowledge product that we are doing. So we have summarized the major elements that we want to put forth in this publication, including summary for the technology in the gaps as well as challenges, and you can read from the slides. What we really focus is technology and innovation for improving disaster risk knowledge to ramp up climate action in vulnerable countries to be in line with the Paris Agreement goals, as we also serves the Paris Agreement. Recently, in this year, August, the Adaptation Fund has also published a very good publication, which is crucial for our publication, because the case studies that were highlighted in those publications has those technology elements that we can elevate it and take more information and learn from their lessons learned and success stories to ensure that the countries that are going to adopt these technologies already learn from what with the other countries are in, because we are already in the learning cycle as well. So we don't want to adopt the same technology with the same kind of mistakes, but we want to improve as we move forward. So the publication really highlights the technology within their subsections. And for example, like the project use district or municipality level data, and simulation model is also throughout. But this indeed, it's really a follow-up coordination and collaboration that we are seeking with the Adaptation Fund. And I'm running out of time. In the interest of time, I'll move to my last slide. So this is how we plan out the work plan. So we are seeking your partnerships in order to enhance the work as we elevate the level of technology development and transfer, which is really required for real implementation on the ground. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you very much. I hope I made to time.
Thanks. Thank you, Mary. And I would like to mention also that the Adaptation Fund has a dedicated window for innovation that complements some of the work when it comes to technology. And my colleague Saria in the room is leading this work. So happy to hear that that the knowledge product that we have issued has been useful in the context of the tech. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A, and I don't know if there are questions in the room before we can see some of the illustrative work that Tofu has done to capture some of the discussion in the room. So anyone has any question to the panelists? Yes. Christina, do you have a mic? Do you have a mic or? Yeah, okay. So if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Natalia Wheatley. I'm the Premier of British Virgin Islands. First of all, thank you for the very insightful presentations. My main question is, how would territories such as the British Virgin Islands have access to the Adaptation Fund? In 2017, for instance, we were impacted by a Category 5 hurricane that devastated our islands. Probably over 90% of the government infrastructure was destroyed, along with many persons' homes, etc. We also had maybe about 2 weeks after that, another Category 5 hurricane that hit us right after. Currently, we don't have access to these type of funds. We're a territory of the United Kingdom. We don't receive any funding from the United Kingdom to be able to adapt to the ill effects of climate change. We're told that because of the OECD rules that only look at gross national income, that we're considered high income, but that doesn't help much when you have damage which is 200% of your gross domestic product, and then you are faced with having to get expensive loans to be able to address recovery, as well as your mitigation, as well as your adaptation. So my question is, how would a territory, what has to happen for a territory such as the BVI to be able to access funds from the Adaptation Fund? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Can we get the mic here?
Thank you so much. Marcos Concepcion from the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction. I just wanted to thank you all for your presentations, especially Claudia and Christina for mentioning communities and civil society. My question for all of you guys is, Christina, you mentioned about involving communities in designing those projects. Going a bit further, how is the fund, the Adaptation Fund, involving also communities and civil society in managing those projects and involving in decision making as well?
Thank you. Unless there are additional questions, we can try to respond to those, and then yes, one last question here. Yes.
Hi, my name is Romy Kotani from Group of Earth Observation Geo, which Mary mentioned as a partner of the tech product. And I'm a huge fan of this study. I read really extensively, took detailed notes, because as Mary said, it's a great contribution to the work that we're doing under Pillar 1 of Early Warnings for All initiative. My question is related to the last question from you also, like the involvement of community. I think the one of the Peruvian, Claudia's presentation mentioned about involving universities, in the community. Can you tell us more about it? And also, like, when you're involving community, involving universities and youth, how how does it play in, in increasing risk knowledge? Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks for those questions. I will try to respond to the first question, and then Claudia can maybe take the second one, and then we also respond to the second question. Thanks for the question about the eligibility and for the British Islands. As you have said, so far the Adaptation Fund doesn't fund projects in the UK territories, and the reason is because the mandate of the fund is to fund projects in eligible developing countries, and for now the UK territories are not eligible to get funding from the Adaptation Fund. We can have a bilateral to discuss furthermore, but that's a principle that has been set by the negotiations, and we don't have additional guidance on that at this stage. I don't know if Claudia, you want to take the question about the last question.
Thank you for the question. We started knowing the people, who they are, what they do. The main activity was fisheries, but how the roles of each of the family, the men that goes to the sea, the women that is in charge to sail the fish, and the kids, and what is happening there. So the first step of involving communities was understanding who were there, them. The second was talking about the students and the university. We identify who were interested students, interested to work in research and investigation with the information that we were gathering with the specific equipment that we bought. So they engaged with the institute, the Research Marine Institute of Peru, and they start developing not also their skills, but also producing information readable and understandable for taking better decisions. So it's like step-by-step work, but it's really nice because, as I mentioned, we visit the two sites that we work in, and the people is really happy with the project, and we are now working on like second phase, because we want to present this project to GCF. We have already presented the idea, and they are really interested to understand how it works to escalate the project, not just in the coast, but also in continental areas. So, yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. And I just want to add to the question about how do we involve local communities in the implementation. So the Adaptation Fund has a comprehensive policy on the environmental and social safeguard, as well as the gender policy, and that policy has to be applied by implementing entities throughout the project cycle. So as part of the project design, we do require entities to consult with the beneficiaries as well as the stakeholders. And we have a principle of do not harm. So the communities have to be involved in the design and make sure that our project do not create any additional harm to the environment and to the communities. But this consultation doesn't stop at the design. As part of the implementation, we do require the entities to report to us how the project is doing on the ground. So if there is any change or if there is any additional issue that is raised during the project implementation, then the consultation has to be redone. So far we have been quite lucky in the sense that we don't have any issue when it comes to this type of issues. Now, we also have a modality that allows some of the communities to be engaged directly during the execution. It's called Enhanced Direct Access, and one of our partners, the South African Biodiversity Institute, has been implementing some of those projects. So through the EDA, communities can directly access funding and execute it through this modality. So I hope that responds to your question, but we're really open to do more if there is any issue on that. I think we are at the end of the session. I will not do justice to do a summary because I think not so many have been said, but thanks to the TOFU illustrative, which I will give the floor in a few minutes maybe to say a few words. But from my side, there are a couple of takeaways from this session. One of the session is that The EF study that has been presented by Christina has identified some challenges on opportunities on building resilience through early warning system disaster risk reduction. These type of reports are usually issued by the Secretariat, but they are not only for us. It's usually to help our stakeholders, including the implement entities and the countries, to learn from the projects and how they can improve the projects on the ground. It's important also to notice to highlight the fact that when we provide funding on the ground, the important and forefront objective is really to build resilience on the ground. And resilience is for communities. So thanks, Claudia, for bringing the importance of having people at the center of our interventions. That's what drives our operation. We hope that concrete actions on the ground are helping people to adapt to climate change. The tangible actions on the ground that you have seen from Tanzania is something that we're really proud of it. We believe that our actions are not necessary for soft activities. We really want to see tangible and concrete actions that can really build resilience through hard infrastructure in some ways, but also through capacity building when it comes to climate issues. Regional cooperation is important. As I was saying, I had a chance to visit the Volta Basin, and it was really nice to see how countries can come together in such complex issue like early warning system. The Volta model is really working well, so we're really happy to see that. Thanks for the tech for bringing this policy dimension. We hope that the cooperation between the fund and the tech can help advance the issue of innovation and also technology to address the climate issues. Now I will give the floor to our colleague from TOFU to give us some insights from the, go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Desiree from TOFU Creative. So I'll just give you a quick visual journey. This is your same hour edit illustration. So just to go through, we started with Nico establishing how the fund has pioneered direct access and how it has established more than 500 early warning systems. And Mr. Lucas discussed how it has disbursed $1.1 billion with 160 projects, providing benefits to the most vulnerable, complementing other funds, and also preventing loss and damage. And Christina discussed some of the challenges, which include coordination, sustainability, COVID as well, and lack of data and technical capacity. And some of the lessons include designing something that's fit for purpose, and this drives success, aligning with the government, and how community-led action leads to long-term resilience. And some of the recommendations include investing in data collection, technical capacity building, and engaging locals throughout the project cycle. And over to our panel, Claudia discussed how it's really important to think of the people, and Frederick discussed some of the DRR interventions that includes reducing exposure, improving management of land, lessening vulnerability, and how interpreting data for decision-making is really key and guiding the locals on managing it. And Roberta discussed Volta Alarm and Enandes, and some of their best practices include technical committees on agriculture and energy. And Maria ended by emphasizing the importance of hardware, software, and orgware, and how that all works together, and how they've been designing with the lessons learned. Thanks, everyone. That's a big picture of today's session.
Thanks, Desiree. I think you've done much better than I summarizing the work. So I would like to thank our panelists. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, Frederick. Thanks, Roberta and Maria. And thank you for staying so late to hear from us. So we're really happy to be continuing this conversation over the next few days and happy to engage further. Our pavilion is in a few meters from here. So please join us at the Climate Funds in case you have further questions. Thanks, everyone. Hi. Great to come to Tanzania. Good to